Well, February is the shortest month of the year, even with an extra day that we get this week. But that does not mean that the dog days and the dog weeks of the regular season in college basketball are not wearing people down. March Madness is barreling towards us. It is coming. And the top teams, well, they're leaping all over each other. And we're going to talk and get into all of it today here on Locked On Women's Basketball.
Ogunbowale for the win.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball.
Well, cheers, friends. It is Monday, February 26th, 2024. I hope the sun is shining in your neck of the woods, and I promise we are not going to talk about controversial court stormings here today. I am Missy Heidrick, and welcome to Locked On Women's Basketball. Thank you for making this your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Well, you can follow me at Missy Heidrick and be sure to follow this podcast at Locked On WBB, and then come see all of my amazing colleagues at The Next. You can find us at thenexthoops.com. Well, we are reaching that critical point in the calendar of the college basketball season, the final days of the regular season, where we crown regular season conference champs. We wager on who is going to win Player of the Year honors all across the country, and then which teams maybe still have a heartbeat for the postseason in March. But today, we are going to bounce all around the country and talk about this week's new AP Top 25 poll, who's trending up, who's trending down, and what to keep an eye on as we head into conference tournaments and, that magical second round of the top 16 reveal. Here to break it all down with me is Alex Simon, sports editor for SF Gate and an Associated Press top 25 voter in women's basketball. Alex Simon, I'm going to start with this. The top two spots did not change. Number 3, number 4, and number 5 did this week. Let's start out west, where you are in the world of the Pac-12. The Stanford Cardinal, they secure yet another regular season Pac-12 title. It will be the last one that will be handed out as it is, as we have known it for so many years. And they come in at number 4 in this week's poll. Talk to me a little bit about this upper half of the AP, what has struck you as interesting, and what about Stanford and what they were able to do this weekend?
I mean, at this point, Missy, what week is a team getting through clean? Honestly, you're seeing teams shoot up the rankings if you just survive with 2 wins in the week. Stanford, I think, kind of probably in a way that shocked everybody, especially because of the fact that the game was on the Pac-12 network on Friday night, meaning a lot of people probably didn't watch it.
Right.
They lost in a kind of stunning fashion to Arizona. The Wildcats came from behind and just stormed Stanford in the fourth quarter to pull off an upset win at Maples, no less, where Stanford is usually pretty formidable. Now, Stanford was without Cameron Brink for that entire game. She had the flu. She had an illness of some type.
Right.
She ends up playing yesterday on Sunday against Arizona State and has, I think, especially considering she told us who were there in the media that she was only at 60%. She had 7 assists, 9 rebounds, 14 points, 5 balls, just an absurd game from her. And I think what we've seen is that this Stanford team has a peak that it has when Brink is not available. They are very clearly one of the best teams. They can win without her, and they have. They beat Oregon State earlier this year without her. But this is a team that without her just is a middling top 25 team. They're probably closer to the lower half. They've lost now to Arizona. They lost a game against Gonzaga where Brink left in the first quarter, and their offense shut down without her.
Right.
They clearly can actually today. It was interesting. They played really well without Talana Lapolo, their point guard, on Sunday against Arizona State. She had a knee injury. They don't think it's serious, but they kept her out on Sunday. But they had Brink back, and they basically inverted their offense. They would kick the ball into Brink and Kiki Uriafen, who then would pass out and kind of become point distributors from the post.
Mm-hmm.
Brink had 7 assists, Erie Offen had 4. I think the Stanford team obviously very clearly needs, one of the best players in the country. If she's healthy and available the rest of the stretch, I don't think anybody has any concerns about them, but there is some vulnerability there. That said, at this point, the thing that I keep taking away from the top is, well, oh my God, Dawn Staley has kept doing it. Missy, do you know the last time she lost a regular season game?
Let's see. It's insane. Like the SEC regular season number.
No, just any regular season game. It was 2021.
Yeah.
It's 2024. It happened to be the very last couple of days of 2021. They lost to Missouri, I think, on December 30th from that 21-22 season.
And then didn't lose again.
But they haven't lost a regular season game in 25 plus months.
Yeah.
Going on 26 months. What they've done is, especially in a year that was supposed to be a huge transition year, it's almost easy to kind of breeze by it and just focus on all of the chaos underneath. But we should make sure we know this is ridiculous.
Oh, I absolutely agree. And I think that's where it was so funny, because early there was some consternation because that was the question about South Carolina. This was the rebuild and they just didn't look the same. But yet, if you actually dove into the roster, you were talking about kids who had been solid role players for the last year or two, now put into the starting lineup. And, oh, hey, you don't miss a beat, because that's just what they do. It's the talent. It's the system. It's an understanding of what the expectation is. I think there were a couple weeks in the voting standpoint where they didn't get all of them, but it's really hard for them not to be a unanimous number one. Over 600 career wins for Dawn Staley, which she achieved over the weekend. And I'm with you. I always start every year saying, all right, the national champion, to me, they go back into number one unless something completely crazy happens. And to be the best, you've got to beat the best. Well, right now, nobody can beat South Carolina. So
they could lose 2 more times and probably still would be my number one team in the country.
100%. Absolutely. I completely agree with you there. Which then leads me to my next question, and up 2 spots this week. And I think your point about Brink is so interesting, because if you look at some of the best teams across the nation that they've lost key players, whether it's been season-ending injuries or ones where they've gone in and out of the lineup, missed a couple games here, been back in, back out, what have you. Texas is one of those stories. They were cruising along, every high expectations. End of December, bam, they lose Rory Harmon. She was the preseason Big 12 Player of the Year. Then they sort of were trying to find their footing. They lost to Baylor. They just weren't finding who they were. Now, all of a sudden, this is a Texas team. They've won 8 games in a row and have put themselves back in that top 5 discussion and could find themselves on a 1 seed when this thing is all said and done. Your thoughts on Texas and just what they have been able to accomplish and be able to turn the page and go forward without a kid like Rory Harmon?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we just gave a lot of plaudits, and there's always a lot of candidates, I think, for Coach of the Year that are very deserving. Dawn Staley at this point absolutely has to be one of those top candidates. But what Vic Schaefer has done with a team that has fundamentally had to change in the middle of the season has been maybe the most impressive coaching job in season of anybody so far in that regard, because this Texas team had to play different. When you're going to orient around somebody who's an all-American level player in Harmon, and then she goes out, what they've been able to do in an extremely deep and competitive conference. Yeah, most of the teams that they added in the conference haven't had the greatest of years, but it's only added to the depth. And I think it's only going to make this conference more interesting come this tournament time that we get in the Big 12 tournament. I know, Missy, you'll know all about that and be all over that. But I think what Texas has done to me is just solidified themselves as not just a program here, but come next year in the SEC, it's hard to think that they're not going to be maybe not, at the South Carolina level, because at this point, is there any team at that level right now in the country? Is there any team on the planet there that's not a WNBA team? But they are the class of that second tier beneath South Carolina at this point, particularly with the way this season's gone in the SEC. I think Texas can come in and be some real damage next year, and they still have plenty of shots to do it this year too.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And you get a Rory Harmon back because she will return from her injury, says she wants to come back better than ever. And I think Texas heading into the SEC just kind of changes the conversation. No longer are some of those teams that have been in that second, 3, 4 spot. You can't just automatically assume that that's where you're going to be. Look, Tennessee, they pushed LSU yesterday. LSU gets a W. They haven't had the stellar season everyone has had, but they're still 24-4. So, I mean, this is the upper echelon of the SEC is going to be adding a very good team in Texas, but I think there's so much more basketball left to be played in front of them, no doubt about it. All right. When we return, Alex and I are going to whip around a little bit more to a host of conferences, and we need to see who's up and who's down, and we have to talk about Virginia Tech. We're going to do that in just a moment. Hi, everyone. I am Missy Heidrick, and thank you for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen every day. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV Channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. So find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV Channels app. Well, I am joined by Alex Simon, sports editor at SF Gate, and also an AP Top 25 voter. And we talked a little bit about the front end and the top part. I would be remiss if we didn't mention the Ohio State Buckeyes. They have clinched themselves a Big Ten title. I feel like they have just quietly just sort of been around, hanging out. And the next thing you know, they've plopped themselves at 24-3 at the number 2 spots. Give me your take on the Ohio State Buckeyes.
I think there's a bit of this season where everybody kind of like this has become maybe one of the most well-balanced, South Carolina notwithstanding, since
Right.
They're the team that still has no losses. Like, Missy, so far this season, do you know how many teams just nationwide, even at the mid-major level, have 2 losses or less?
Yeah.
At this point, there's 4 teams total.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that even getting through this season with 3 losses is itself a national story of note. If you're a mid-major with 2 or 1, I've been voting at this point now for all 3 of the mid-majors at 2 or less for a couple of weeks, just because this season it feels like just winning all of the games is itself a noteworthy thing. What Ohio State's done, I don't think they have been the better team in every single game they've played, but you don't have to be the better team if you win the game.
Mm-hmm.
When they beat Iowa, I think everybody would say Iowa is probably the best team, if only because of Caitlin, but Ohio State is darn good. They have won the games they are supposed to win.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, they are not slipping up, especially, they haven't lost at all so far in 2024 after they started Big Ten play with a loss to Michigan. And Michigan's looked better. Ohio State has just been rolling since then. I do fear in a longer term projection that maybe Ohio State is peaking now, and that could make you susceptible come Big Ten tournament play, come NCAA tournament play. But everything about this team screams that they are going to be able to be a problem this year. Cody McKinnon is going to be a problem next year, and potentially the year after that too, if she wants to be. This is a very good team in a very deep conference.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And like you said, losing a team like Michigan, who has been playing better, those things, look at what Michigan State has been able to do this season. Those are games. It doesn't matter in any league, anytime, any sport. You win by 1 or 21, it still counts as a W. So you just got to figure out a way to do it. And in a lot of these instances for these teams in the upper part of their conferences, they've also found a way to not only hold home court, but to win a couple on the road. And we know how important that really is. Let's jet and keep going east, and let's talk about the ACC, because it's been solid all year. I feel like it's been one of those conferences, a lot like the Pac-12, where it's deep and people have beat up on each other, haven't necessarily allowed anybody to get their footing. The one team that seems to me that might be doing what they did a year ago in replication is this Virginia Tech squad and what Kenny Brooks has there. And because of the experience he brought back, and, I don't get a vote in the ACC, but for anybody that doesn't vote for Elizabeth Kitley to be a 3-time ACC Player of the Year, I would want to chat with you, because she would get mine.
Well, she might also be the one that tells you to vote for her teammate Georgia Amore too, though.
True.
So I've followed Virginia Tech basically since I was in college, in part because, one, Kenny Brooks, I covered his teams when he coached at James Madison because they were conference rivals of my undergrad, Elon. But Elon even played a WNIT game at Virginia Tech. So seeing Castle Coliseum that full, not at the tip-off for
Mhm.
the game, but that full during game day,
Yeah.
multiple hours ahead of time. That is a community that cares so deeply about its college sports,
Mhm.
but they finally have a team, I think, that they are caring about on the women's side to this level that has truly become a standard bearer, especially when you look at how the ACC is going to change next year.
Yeah.
It's only going to get deeper when Stanford starts playing games out there.
Yeah.
I think Virginia Tech is building a program that will certainly have a big gap once Kitley leaves,
Mhm.
but everything about this program feels like something that's built to last for a while. And it's a massive kudos to Kenny Brooks. It's a massive kudos to what Kitley has done by sticking around. She is an indomitable force for them inside in a way that truly is just a joy to watch as a neutral observer.
No, I agree with you, and she just has so many tools in the toolbox. You can watch this kid score, whether it's a fadeaway out of the post or it's a putback of her own miss. She's got the ability to take somebody off the bounce on one dribble because she extends the defense. She just does so many different things that don't always show up in a stat sheet because the attention she draws has given a Georgia Amore or a Kayla King open shots for the last couple years, and
Mhm.
that's what's made them, I think, so difficult for people to be able to shut down.
I also think too, and you notice this, I think, especially with some of the top bigs in the country, it's the idea that they're perceiving not just that they want the ball, but how they want the ball. There was a
Right.
great breakdown during the Louisville game where Kitley was in the post, but she didn't want the post entry to come from the player who was on the wing. She actually said, pass it to the other player on the free throw line, who
Mhm.
then can give it to me while I've got this person kind of sealed where it's tough to maybe go over her head from this angle, but make that quick pass come over the top the
Yeah.
other way. She's not going to be able to stop it. She drew a foul out of it. And to me, that's where it's like you are thinking beyond the
Yeah.
level that you are just like
Mhm.
trying to get the ball. I don't just want the ball. I know how I want to get the ball in
Yeah.
that regard. That's the type of next level stuff that even if maybe she isn't what I would say like the like pound for pound most talented player in the
Mhm.
country, that's
Mhm.
the type of stuff that creates a WNBA career.
100%. Basketball IQ is something that kids can grow into, but that's the kind of thing that also allows them to win games that people may, where you get down and you make plays and you figure out a way and you scratch and claw just as they did. They scratched and clawed their way to the Final Four a year ago. I think anyone would be crazy if they overlooked this Virginia Tech squad again this season. Let's stay out in the ACC. I was surprised to see this North Carolina team who kind of felt like they were peaking, so young, getting so much out of some of those young kids for Westmore, but yet they go on the road to Duke and they lose on Sunday. They lost 69-58. They've dropped 6 spots in the AP poll this week. They come in at number 12. Just your thoughts as you've looked at this NC State team, and could they be one of those that a lot like in Ohio State? Are we peaking maybe at the wrong time? Did we get the glimpse? And haven't really, is there anything else that we're going to get?
They also in this week in particular they dropped 2 in a row. They lost both of their local rivalry games on the road. I think the schedule probably did not help them to have the
Yes.
back-to-back at North Carolina just up the road, go a little farther up the road to Duke in that way. Those are
Mhm.
2 big local rivalry games. People were raucous in Chapel Hill. Admittedly, I didn't see what it was like at the atmosphere in Durham, but I can suspect it was a fun environment
Yeah.
there. I think this is actually a team that maybe needed this now
Mhm.
to then maybe fix whatever things might be not perfect coming to the ACC tournament. This
Mhm.
is a Westmore team that is pretty good at making adjustments. But in this season, there's just a lot of quality teams. It
Yeah.
is clearly hard. I mean, you have teams even who are dominating in their conference play, like UConn. They're still 24-5.
Yeah.
Just the way that you are scheduling all year long, people have given themselves battles. It probably has left them more susceptible to close games going against them. This
Mhm.
NC State team, though, at its peak, has been in games against some of the top teams in the country. I still have faith that they could make a deep tournament run,
Mhm.
but there's a lot of teams that I have faith could do it, and there's only going to be 8 that make it to the Elite 8 and 4 that make it to the Final Four. So it is going to be tough for them to do that once you get there.
No, I think you're right. And one of the things that we're going to talk about in just a minute is thinking about what that top 16 looks like and then saying, "Oh my goodness, that is not a team I want to see in my bracket." And the NCAA tournament is about matchups, and it is about sometimes getting the right team at the right time. Somebody gets hot, but yet if you don't have the ability to play at home or you have to go to a tough environment, that really does change the landscape, especially with a young team like an NC State. It might not be the perfect situation for them come tournament time. All right, when we come back, more on this week's poll. We got to talk a little bit about some of those Big 12 teams other than Texas. And then what does the poll tell us about what lies ahead for this upcoming second reveal of the top 16 seeds from the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee? But first, a message from our friends at Stitch Fix, which is absolutely something that I adore. Did you know that you can get instant a confidence boost from an outfit or anything that you do from shopping, and it really does help you feel better some days? I will be honest, that is absolutely true, and that is why I have gone to Stitch Fix. Easily upgrade your wardrobe this year with a professional stylist that helps you find new on-trend favorites that work. You give your stylist your size, styles, your budget preferences. The boxes come in the mail. I get what I want. There is no subscription required. And then they send 5 just for you pieces, plus recommendations, pro styling advice. You get to keep what works, and then you send it back. Stitch Fix makes it all easy. I love to shop, and they help me save time and effort. So plus, I get what makes me look good and what I really want, which is also super helpful. So if you don't love something, you just send it back. It's shipping, returns, and exchanges are always free. Style that makes you feel as good as you look. Get started today at stitchfix.com/lockedon. That's stitchfix.com/lockedon, all capital letters, stitchfix.com/lockedon. Hi, everyone. It is Missy Heidrick. Thank you for joining us here on Locked On Women's Basketball, and I'm joined by Alex Simon. Alex, before we talk about Top 16 Reveal, which is coming down this week on Leap Day, of all things, on Thursday the 29th, let's talk a little bit about the Big 12. It is the world of which I live in, and we talked about Texas, about the job that Vic Schaefer has done with this group without Roy Harmon. They've won 8 games in a row. But you also have an Oklahoma team. They're up in this week's poll. They're at number 20. Baylor, they had a bounce back win. I thought kind of a bounce back week of what they've needed. And they get a win over a ranked West Virginia squad. West Virginia had 2 losses to ranked teams, 1 in overtime. And then there's this Kansas State squad who gets a win at home in overtime over West Virginia, went on the road yesterday and lost to their rival Kansas in Lawrence. Just a snapshot of what you've seen from the Big 12 and where this all lays out in a very deep league, which we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I think you could say this about a lot of the leagues right now, that there is so much quality in the depth that it is probably hurting the records. But I do think for most of us in the AP poll, it's been almost easier in some regard because of the fact that, well, there's really only 1 or 2 teams who really have a 0 or a 1 or a 2 that you're going to have. So I think what you're finding is the course of a season, there has been so much quality, and these leagues have grown so big that it is easy for a lot of these teams to kind of get through their schedule, picking off wins here and there. But then when you go to these head-to-head matchups, they become even more important.
Yes.
I do think this is a league that maybe has a little bit of a top-heavy nature to it in what Texas has done, and especially if you wonder what Texas would have been like had Harmon stayed healthy.
Right.
But what you're seeing, I think, is that second level of teams, and even maybe that third level, have beat up on each other a little bit more than they anticipated, and even kind of gone downstream a little bit. That the conference is clearly a quality conference, and I will wonder how things shake out with the depth of teams. But you look at the bubble, and there's been enough non-conference losses out of the Big 12 that I do wonder if you're going to see, when you get to the bubble, a team like somebody from the Pac-12, which is what I wanted to bring up, kind of those 7th, 8th, 9th potential teams from the conference The Big 12 has had that in recent years. I'm not sure this is going to happen this year for that conference in that way.
No, I agree with you because I think you're right. I think that there's a definitive line and that their conference tournament changes this year. There are teams with double byes and all of that, and it's going to look very different when they play in Kansas City in a couple weeks. And that has always been what the Big 12 has been. The double round robin beat up on each other and someone's just left standing at the end. This year it's different because they haven't played everybody twice. And then you see the ups and downs of it. I think the Pac-12 is in a lot of the same situation where they've all had to play each other and you're just in the survival mode once you get to this point. And then who can be peaking at the right time heading into their conference tournament?
So the one thing too, though, to kind of flip that, when you compare those two, because I think there's been a similar element to that. The Pac-12 in the last top 16 reveal had 5 teams, not just in the top 16, but 5 in the top 11.
Right.
It would inform you that even maybe the teams beneath it, those teams had done great. A lot of those teams have now beat up on each other. And just this weekend alone, you saw USC lose to Utah. Oregon State went on the road and lost to Washington. Stanford lost to Arizona. There's at least a possibility to me that if you still see all 5, maybe even a 6th team crash in, I don't think you'll see a 6 from the Pac-12 crash in. But if all 5 of those are still in the top 16, I think that means that lower down, Washington State, even with a record of 17-12, they've picked off some big wins. They've had a key injury and have still been able to be successful without Charlize Ledger-Walker. They could still be a tournament bid crasher. Arizona with the win over Stanford, all of a sudden, that's a massive win that could make a difference in your seeding down underneath. Also, you still have, I'm looking right now at the net rankings, and I think the Pac-12 has a total of 8 teams in the top 33. But more to the point, it's 4 of the top 11 and 6 of the top 18.
Yeah.
If 6 of those teams end up, or even 5 in the top 16, that's going to tell you that I think that'll inform the bubble, which is the stuff we don't know.
Yes.
For this point. And I think Kansas State losing to Kansas in the way that they did, I could look at them, Colorado, Oregon State, all teams that have suffered a loss recently that I wonder where they'll shake out in this most recent poll in the top 16 seed that we get on Thursday, and say, all right, where were these teams at in our mind and where are these teams at now? Utah, for as much as they're low in the poll, they're 7th in the net.
Yes.
They clearly have played a schedule that is giving them the boost between what they play in conference and out of conference. Could they even crash the top 16? So kind of for those two in particular, with the way that they have quality depth, but how quality does the committee perceive that depth is a massive question. I think that we'll get at least a teasing answer to on Thursday.
Well, and I think to me, a game that may impact what we see Thursday, which would be, comparative to this week's AP poll, is Colorado and UCLA play tonight. And that's 8 p.m. Eastern or 8 p.m. Central Time, I believe, here in my bucket. So I think that could be a game that impacts how people are viewing the league, the depth, what those net scores are. Teams that have been with or without available talent, we know that comes into play. My question to you is this, because I was surprised when that first 16 came out. We'll see the second 16 this week on the 29th. Is Gonzaga. Is there been enough movement? Have there been enough happen above them that when push comes to shove, that the Bulldogs are going to be able to play themselves into being able to host in the NCAA tournament?
It's just really tough because of the way that you assume the committee perceives other people around the country. I think not to say that they're rooting for any non-team but themselves in particular, but they would definitely get a boost from Stanford finishing off the season really strong, a team that they beat in non-conference, even if Brink was hurt for part of the game. If Stanford can win the Pac-12 tournament, not just the regular season title from here, I think that's maybe Gonzaga's best bet. But metrics-wise, they have a lot behind them kind of bolstering their case. They scheduled hard. They're 28-2. They're 12th in the net. They're actually higher in the net than they are in the AP poll.
Yeah.
Because I think so much of these teams beat up on each other that there's enough good wins for an AP poll voter to move them around and kind of just let them be lost in the shuffle and just say, oh, they're winning, but it's against WCC teams. If you go win, it's going to be very interesting. I bet we see them sneak into the 15th or 16th spot this week, but especially because of the way that net ranking is helping, I think, bolster some stuff. But they're going to have to obviously not slip up again the rest of the way to really have a shot at that top 4 seed spot come March to host.
I was going to say, you got to take care of your own business, right? I mean, that has to be the message if you're Gonzaga. And it's really the message of any of those teams when they're going to see if your name shows up on that list come Thursday. Say, all right, we're in the play now. We've got to be able to figure out a way to do this. Now, not everybody's going to win. Not all those 16 teams are going to win their conference tournament. Somebody's losing along the way. When we talk about the Power Fives, someone's going to get beat.
In the Pac-12,
right?
If there's 5 of them there, somebody has to lose in the quarterfinals.
Yeah, someone's getting beat. Like, not everybody's winning out as the way. That's just not humanly possible. The numbers don't go that way. However, you can help your case, but I do think late losses and early exits in conference tournament can absolutely impact what we see come Selection Sunday. I think this snapshot on Thursday gives you sort of the lay of the land, but it sure as heck is not anything that is set in stone.
Yeah, and I think, there's a couple of teams that, because their net ranking is so different, I think, than what the public perceives them to be, kind of the committee being humans, but knowing that they use a lot of this as a base.
Yes.
I'm going to be fascinated to see, like, UConn's number 2 in the country in net ranking. I don't think anybody would call them the number 2 team in the country, but are they going to end up a lot higher than where they currently are in the AP poll when we see the seeds here? Right. Iowa was lower. I mean, Colorado was in 1 seed. They were the 4th overall seed the last time. We certainly have seen some movement in between weeks. We'll see more movement by the time we actually get to Selection Sunday, but there's a lot of intrigue to come Thursday.
Amen. And there's a lot of basketball left to be played, which that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of it. All right. Before I let you go, for everybody that hasn't had a chance, I want you to go follow Alex on his Twitter account, but then get over to SF Gate. You had one of the coolest experiences that you have written about now for SF Gate. And so just give everybody a snapshot of your newest article and the experience that you had down in Arizona at the Giants training camp.
Yeah, I did a fantasy camp that you can do in various sports. Baseball ones, you spend a full week. I went down and played baseball for a week. Longtime readers and followers of The Next and all of our previous website iterations like High Post Hoops have known that I am more than happy to put my life and limb and dignity on the line for the sake of a good story. I've tried out for a WNBA male practice squad before. So playing baseball for a week in Arizona with my family was a really fun thing. And I wrote about it just here today on Monday, and would appreciate everybody tuning in to listen to read and see all the photos of my very much shaped, maybe not in shape, but shaped body playing baseball for a week.
Well, it's fantastic, and I encourage everybody to go see it. My one question, what did you learn anything about your swing? Like, were you top heavy, like where, hands first, like what did you learn?
I was also kind of playing on a bum knee, but I was able to compensate by just keeping my weight completely back and kind of open stancing it a little bit.
Okay,
so I was able to kind of open stance, and fastballs up were a temptation too strong for me. I was swinging and missing at a few of them, but I could square up a curveball pretty good at least.
There we go. Stay in the zone, man. You got to stay in the zone. Well, Alex Simon, it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much, my friend. And for everybody, go see Alex at Alex Simon Sports. He's also keeping all of us in line at the Next, which I greatly appreciate it. And we will talk down the line because the NCAA tournament is right around the corner.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. You can find me at Missy Heidrick on X, formerly known as Twitter. All of my amazing colleagues get over to thenexthoops.com and see us there. So thank you for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen every day. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV Channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for your 24/7 covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV Channels app. Thank you, everybody. Have a fantastic week. Tune in. So much basketball left to be played.